Thank you for tuning in to the MBL Network, and you're watching the MBL Blitz.
What's going on, MBL? Welcome to another episode of the Blitz Podcast. As always, I'm your host, TFA, and with me today, I have my new co-host, Chunky, who's going to be taking over co-host duties from my previous co-host, JY. We want to thank JY for everything that he did here at the Blitz. But Chunky, I am super excited to have you as my new official co-host, and I know for a fact that you've been putting in a ton of work. What do you think the number one thing that you're going to be able to bring to the Blitz is?
I'm just going to be able to bring the excitement factor that I bring wherever I go. I think I'm just glad to be here, and I'm happy for the opportunity.
Well, we're glad to have you here. I love how you mentioned the excitement factor. I hope that you can turn into a one-man hype machine. Here at the Blitz, we're going to be heading down a new path. Instead of focusing on all of the draft-related information that we have previously been covering, we're going to switch our focus here to a little bit more of current league news, storylines around the league in order to keep you guys and viewers involved with everything happening throughout the season in the MBL. So our first segment this week is going to be about the current hot and cold teams in MBL. Now we're currently about halfway through the season. You're going to see here on the graphic we got a couple teams pulled up for you. Chunky, the first thing that stands out to me, we've got the red hot teams, the Giants, man. The Giants stand out to me. We've got them on the graphic at 5-0. I believe that they've actually won another game after that. What stands out to you about this list about the Giants? You know, how are they currently doing so well? This is definitely not a team that we thought was going to be this good coming into the season.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And, I think personally that I don't expect to see this trend continue for the Giants. You look at their strength of schedule, and it's just not all that great. They've played teams like the Packers, the Buccaneers, and the Seahawks. And those just aren't great teams. Those are all below 500 teams. I know the Packers are winless so far, and that's just – I don't see the trend continuing for the Giants.
Yeah, I would agree with you. We saw the Bucs pick up a big win on MBL Live a couple nights ago. And all the talk's been on this Giants defense, how they're not allowing any points. I believe the last stat I saw was they were only allowing about 9 points a game, which is really, really low. That's a very good defense. But when you take into perspective that they're playing teams like the Packers, the Buccaneers, these are not good offensive teams. These are teams that are turning the ball over, 4, 5, 6 times a game, not putting up a lot of points. So I'm with you. I expect, I think they've got a good chance to contend in that division if they can keep it up. But I think as their schedule gets a little bit tougher, I think that defense is going to start, having some flaws and having some bad games. Another team I want to focus in on here is the Falcons. Falcons, they're under new ownership this year, but they're coming off an MBL Super Bowl victory. Previous owner won the Super Bowl. We've got a new owner in there this year, but still, the pieces were definitely in place for this team to contend. I'm really disappointed in the fact that they're only 1-4 to start the season. What are your thoughts on that?
And, I'm very disappointed in that, too. I thought the Falcons would do a lot better coming off a Super Bowl victory. And you look at their losses, and it's not like they're losing to 7-0, 6-1 teams. I'm sorry, 4-1, 5-0 teams like the Giants and the Titans and the Jaguars. They're losing to teams like the Cowboys and the Saints and the Panthers. And the Panthers, we saw they just lost to the Buccaneers on MBL Live. And so I just very disappointed to see the Falcons where they are.
Yeah, I think they have a lot of work to do. They definitely need to turn it around there. It's definitely not the players that are in place because the players that they got there obviously just won them a Super Bowl. I expect them to turn around and kind of get into a rhythm. They're still learning the ins and outs of the MBL, and they're still learning how a lot of people play. Also, the other team that accompanies them in the ice cold section is the Eagles. You see here that they're 0-4. I'm not sure if they've gathered a win since then. I think they've played 1 or 2 games since then. I'm not sure if they've gotten a win, but that's a very disappointing team. I picked the Eagles to contend in the NFC East this year. I thought the Eagles were going to be one of the best teams, and vice versa. I thought the Giants were going to be one of the worst. So it's really interesting to see the Giants at 5-0 and the Eagles at 0-4. That's something I didn't expect to see coming into the season. Let's switch our focus here, talking about teams that are 0-4, talking about bad teams. We're going to switch over to the Denver Broncos. I want to talk about the Denver Broncos a little bit, just because they've got a MBL live game coming up here. I believe it's week 10, Chunky. Correct me if I am wrong, but I believe they have an MBL live game on week 10. And if we know anything about this Denver Bronco team, it's that they struggle when they are in the spotlight on MBL live. You see on the graphic here, week 5, I believe it was season 21 or season 22, they had a tie against the Patriots. They lost to the Seahawks. They got blown out by the Chiefs, and they lost to the Raiders. So in the last few seasons, they're really, really bad when they're on MBL Live, and everybody around the league knows it. If this team goes on MBL Live, you might as well bet against them. What do you think is going to happen when they go on MBL Live this time?
If it's week 10, look for them to turn that trend around. They're going up against the Cowboys. I could see them winning that game very easily. But, you look at the Broncos, and their struggles seem to be from lack of offense. Besides that loss against the Chiefs, 7 points, 3 points, 10 points, but obviously the Chiefs put up 31, so the lack of defense there would have been the big issue.
Yeah, I completely agree. This Broncos team does not have a lot of good things going on right now. They're really seeming to struggle. I'm not sure why they're struggling so bad. They definitely lost some key pieces to that defense. And I think that's a big part to their struggles right now. But they can't get into a rhythm on either side of the ball. Offensively, they're really struggling. Defensively, they're struggling. They're not forcing a ton of turnovers like they used to when they were, competing in that division. I really expected that division to be a little bit tougher all around this year. I know that you're kind of coming through now. You had a rough start to your season over there in the AFC West. So you're making it a little bit of a race. You're making it tough and letting the Raiders and the Chiefs know that you're there behind them. But I'm not sure I see the Broncos really doing anything this year. I could actually see Porter and the Broncos getting the number 1 pick in the draft. What do you think about that?
I don't know about the number 1 pick. I could see the Broncos turning around here soon. Like I said, I see them winning week 10 against the Cowboys. And then I could definitely see them winning a few more games. They've already won 2 games this season, I believe. I don't see them having the number 1 pick.
I would agree. I think there are worse teams out there. I wouldn't be surprised if a team like the Packers got it. Even though the Bucs just picked up a win, they could be a good team to get it. Let's switch over now. I want to talk about some of the toughest and the weakest divisions right now in the MBL. Now, I'm going to start off with the AFC. I'll go ahead and I'll take the AFC because the division that we have right now is currently the division I'm in. That's the AFC South, is currently the toughest division in the MBL. Currently, the records, they're a little bit better now, but on the graphic here, you see that the Titans are 5-1. Myself and the Jaguars are 4-1. You have the Texans at 4-1, and then you have the Colts at 2-4. 2-4 for the Colts. I think Pricey's a lot better than a 2-4 team. The couple times I played him, he's played me real tight, and I've seen him have some big wins here this season. Even I believe he had a 34-3, or it was a huge win earlier in the season. The Texans, Doughboys, the defending reigning AFC South champion. He had the best record in the AFC last year. He went into the playoffs as the number 1 seed. So that's a very good team. That Texans team is very good defensively. That's who handed me my 1 loss, and they're a very good defensive team. And then you've got the Titans, who started off real strong. They had some struggles last year with their quarterback controversies, but this year they're turning it around. They're playing really well, and I think this Titans team is a real tough team to watch. I'm definitely not looking forward to facing them. Chunky, what can you tell me about the weakest division over there in the NFC West?
The NFC West over here, we got the Rams at 3-3, the 49ers at 2-3, the Cardinals at 2-4, and the Seahawks at 1-5. The 49ers really looking to turn it around. I know they were a lot worse team a few seasons back, and they've been really optimistic about how they're going to play this season. I believe Deca thinks he's going to win the division, and I think if he wins the division, obviously he's going to make the playoffs, and I could definitely see him winning this division. with the Rams at 3-3, the 49ers right there behind them, I could definitely see Deca coming out, winning a few more games this season and taking that division.
Yeah, ultimately, I think this division is going to come down to the Rams and the 49ers. I just got done playing Deca. Deca's a very good team. That 49ers team, they don't quit. He's got a lot of pieces over there, a lot of good wide receivers. Kirk Cousins is playing real well at quarterback. I think Deca definitely has, like you were saying, what it takes to win. And he's definitely built his team up. And he's one of the most intriguing owners in the entire league because from what he's been able to do, the quick turnaround that he's had, from being the very, very bottom just a couple seasons ago, and now he's building it up, and he has a chance to win that division. I think that's really interesting, and that's one of the more interesting and intriguing storylines to follow here. Chunky, if you had to guess, who would you have right now winning both of these divisions, the AFC South and the NFC West?
The AFC South, that one's tough. I think I'm going to go with the Jaguars. I think I'm going to go with UTFA. You just look at the Titans. I don't think their record shows what they're truly doing. They look at their strength of schedule, very weak schedule for the Titans, and they played one decent team, and that was the Bills, and they lost that game. So I don't see that trend continuing. So I see the Jaguars in the AFC South. In the NFC West, I'm going to go with Deca. I think he's going to come out, and I think he's going to win that division this year. So watch out for Deca in the NFC West.
I'm going to be with you. I think that Deca is going to win the NFC West. I think it's going to be a massive upset. I think Jay Moon and the Rams, this is a guy that's won an MBL Super Bowl. I think that if he loses that division to Deca, I don't think we're ever going to hear the end of it. But I think Deca has a really, really good shot of winning that division. As far as my division goes, I think it's all going to come down to the end of the season. I know I still have 2 games left against the Titans, another game against the Texans, and 2 against the Colts. I know that we all have a lot of divisional games against each other left. So, here as the season winds down, we're kind of going to be beating each other up a little bit. And it's definitely going to be a really hard-fought division, but I am definitely going to try and win that division to prove you right. Let's switch over now. We've got a couple of Silver Star players here. These are some of the players that have really stood out here to the halfway point in the season. Whether they're leading their teams to victories, they might not have the best stats, but these are the guys that you really want to watch for as the season progresses, and these are the guys that could help their teams to not only a playoff run, but to head deep into the playoffs and maybe potentially get them to an MBL Super Bowl. The first one I want to talk about is going to be the quarterback for the Buffalo Bills. That's going to be Dustin Ely. This guy was not one of the top names in that quarterback draft a couple years ago. Everybody was kind of a little bit worried about Ely. All the talk was on Ripkowski and Darby and Zott, and Ely came in, and he's been playing really, really well for the Bills. I just played him a couple weeks ago. You see the stats on the screen. He's got 154 passing attempts, 1,750 yards, 15 interceptions, and 14 touchdowns. So that's the stat right there that really worries you, Chunky, is the interceptions. But do you think that Dustin Ely and how well he's playing this year, he's leading the Bills to wins. He's got them on top of the AFC East. Do you think that Dustin Ely could lead the Bills back to the playoffs after a 2-year absence?
I definitely think it's possible. I think the Bills have a good chance to contend for that division. And you look at Ely, he wasn't, like you said, one of the most highly touted quarterbacks coming out of that draft, but he's turning out to be one of the better quarterbacks, if not the best quarterback out of that draft. You look at Darby and Ripkowski, all they've been doing is throwing interceptions. You look at Aragoose out of that draft for the Panthers. He was benched this season for Lavaris Bobo, but then he was brought back in last week on MBL Live. Ely's definitely one of the better quarterbacks coming out of that draft, and I could definitely see him taking the Bills to the playoffs.
Yeah, he definitely has a shot. We also had news today, big news for the Bills. If you're a Bills fan, if you're a fan of Ely and what Jay Baston's able to do over there, the Jets actually have a 2-game suspension coming up. So that's really going to hurt them, but it's really going to help the Bills. If the Bills can get off to a couple wins here, and the Jets can get a couple losses, I think that could really put some separation on this division, and I think the Bills will definitely have a stranglehold. Maybe that'll take a little bit of pressure off of Ely too. That way he's not forcing as many throws, not trying to force it down the field, not throwing as many interceptions. Let's look at the defensive side of the ball now. We've got the strong safety for the Lions. That's going to be Miles Killebrew. He's going to be our Silver Star awarded player at the halfway point here. He's got 22 tackles, 2 sacks, 1 interception, and 2 touchdowns. This Lions defense is always one that's pretty good. Sometimes, they're a little bit better than other years, but I think this is one of the better Lions defenses that we've seen. What do you think about that, Chunky? You think that this is one of the better Detroit defenses that we've seen in the past few seasons?
I think Detroit always has a good team, obviously. They're always in the playoffs, and they're always contending for a Super Bowl. But this defense is definitely looking mean, and I think this is probably one of the better defenses we've seen from the Detroit Lions.
Yeah, all the talk's always about the Lions and Bomber and how good of an offensive player he is. And he's really lighting it up offensively this year. He's having one of the better years, again, on offense that he's had in the past few years. He might be one of my favorites to come out of the NFC this year with how well he's playing. But, it's hard to say how much Miles Killebrew means to this team, because they're very, very good defensively. But at the safety position, whenever you're a safety and you've got that many tackles, you're getting sacks, you're getting the touchdowns. The 2 touchdowns is what really stands out to me. That shows you that he's a big-time playmaker, a Sonny Weaver splash play kind of guy. And he's the guy that's going to take over the games. If you're scoring touchdowns on the defensive side of the ball, you're going to win a lot more games than you're losing. Our final guy here for the Silver Star players is going to be halfback Titus Roth of the Oakland Raiders. Now, currently, he leads the league in rushing yards, 83 attempts, 571 yards, 3 touchdowns. He's averaging almost 7 yards a carry. Now, they brought him in this year, Chunky, with the hopes that he was going to get them back to the Super Bowl. And I think that he is doing everything that they brought him in to do. I don't think that their passing game has been that great up until this point, but Roth can't be stopped. I mean, when you're averaging 7 yards a carry at the running back position, that sets you up for second and shorts, and you're definitely going to be picking up a lot of first downs, and it's going to make it really hard for the other team to tell what you're doing. Do you think that Titus Roth could win the MVP award this year, Chunky?
I think it's going to be close. I think he's going to be in that conversation, definitely. Titus Roth, definitely one of the better free agent pickups, probably best free agent pickup from the last year and in recent history. But, this year he's just absolutely having a monster year. Like you said, leading the league in yards. Also leading the league in yards after contact, which is above 200 yards for him, which is absolutely a wild number. Having 100 yards per game. And we saw that game that he had against the Bengals on MBL Live, went for 154 yards and 2 touchdowns. And he's just absolutely killing it this year. I definitely think we'll see him in that MVP conversation.
Yeah, and the Raiders are currently sitting behind the Chiefs. The Chiefs are undefeated in that division. I believe that the Raiders are 2 games back, Chunky, if that's correct. Is that correct, that they're 2 games back?
I believe that's correct, yeah.
So I think that Roth is really going to need to come on strong if they're going to contend, because the Chiefs are playing some of the best football that I've seen in NBL in a while. So I think that he's really going to need to carry this team. But those are going to be your 3 Silver Star awarded players. And I don't want to finish this episode just yet. I want to give a big shout out to JY as he put together some NBL rookies to watch here at the mid-season point. Now, Chunky, we've got a couple guys here up on the screen. We've got 10 rookies to watch. We've got 5 on the offensive side, 5 on the defensive side. I want to key in on a guy real quick, and then you can key in on a guy as well. Lavaris Bobo, we talked about him earlier. Panthers brought him in. He started off the season actually pretty well, a lot better than people had thought. And then all of a sudden, he's benched for Araguz. Last season, the Panthers had the same issue. They had Araguz, and they benched Araguz for Matt Ryan. And then back to Araguz, and now to Bobo. This is turning into quite the quarterback carousel over in Carolina. What's going on over there? What's going on with this quarterback situation?
Both these quarterbacks obviously just underperforming. Lavaris Bobo was considered probably the best quarterback to come out of this draft, but he has not played that way. 6 touchdowns compared to 16 interceptions, and that's just a monster differential. You just cannot be throwing 16 interceptions in this league and expecting that to translate to wins.
No, and in the NBL, the teams that normally end up going to the Super Bowl and winning the Super Bowl and making deep playoff runs are the teams that don't turn the ball over a lot. They're the teams that are sound with the ball. They've got their fundamentals in order, and they can really push the ball down the field, and they don't really have to worry about too much because they're not going to be giving the ball away, which is a key. You're always going to control field position if you're not throwing interceptions, not fumbling the ball. So it's a really big issue over there in Carolina. We've seen quite the fall from the Panthers over the past couple of years from what they once were. You look at a couple of these other guys. You got Callaway, Woodard, McKay. All these guys are having very, very good seasons. Woodard, I know, is very good defensively for the Texans. Callaway is an interception machine. I think he's turning out to be a lot better than they thought over there. And a big, the Ravens are doing great this year. I think the Ravens are one of the most under-talked about teams this year. I think CMF's really done a good job over there. Is there anybody in here on this list that you want to key in on?
PJ Baker, I think he's having a good year, and if I can recall, I don't think he was a first-round pick. So a later pick, and to have the kind of year that he's having is incredible. At 338 yards and 5 touchdowns so far, he's leading this Bears offense. He's running whenever they need him to, and he's picking up first downs and obviously getting the yards and the touchdowns that they need. So he's been one of the better rookies so far this year.
The Bears are really looking to get over that hump too, being a 10-6 team and actually make it into the playoffs and compete. They've always got that great defense, and I think Baker, like you're saying, I think Baker can really give this offense the firepower that they need. You see on this list too, a couple of guys. I know that you selected Paulson and Easley both in the first round, I believe, and I know Easley's been hurt, correct?
Yep, he broke his collarbone against the Ravens. I can't recall which week it was, but he's been out for a few weeks now.
Yeah, so when Easley comes back, I mean, you've got quite the tandem there, the quarterback-wide receiver tandem. I think you've got the best quarterback-wide receiver tandem that we got out of this draft. Those guys were first-round picks. Callaway, obviously, an early pick. McKay, Woodard, a lot of first-round picks on this board, but you've got a few, later-on picks. Bobo, I believe, was selected in the second round. Baker, I think you were right. I think Baker was also a second-round pick. Rayford, the linebacker, my linebacker, I didn't select him until the fourth round. It might have even been fifth. So you're seeing a lot of guys. In the MBL, it doesn't take a first-round pick to be good. We've got a lot of good guys and good talent coming out of the later rounds. So it just goes to show that, it doesn't matter who you draft or how you draft. You're always going to find players that can contribute here in the MBL. That's going to do it for this episode of the MBL Blitz Podcast. I love having you guys with me. We're going in a different direction, so hang with us. We're going to get things ironed out. In the weeks coming, we're going to have much more, excitement, much more segments. We're going to keep the segments rolling kind of with what we're doing. We're going to try to cut down on the time of the episodes a little bit. But we're going to have some, less people, so there's less confusion. I'm really excited, though, Chunky, to have you with me. I think we're going to have a really, really good time once we get a little bit more chemistry down here. As the year progresses, I think, by time Madden 18 comes out, I think we're just going to be rolling through it. And I think that the MBL is really starting to put out some of the best content that we have ever seen. I think we're just going to have big stuff coming from the MBL network. So everybody watching at home, stay tuned. Stay up with everything going on with the MBL network, whether it's MBL Live Games, our Blitz podcast, the Commissioner's Corner podcast, which will be next week, whether it's the 4 Verts podcast coming out with some new news about the new Madden or what we'd like to see. We've got so much stuff going on right now that we're huge right now, so you don't want to miss any of it. Go over to the MBL Network on YouTube, subscribe to our channel, and go ahead and follow us. Follow us on Twitter, follow us on Facebook. We're always posting stuff. We've always got stuff going on. Chunky, you have anything you want to say for your first episode as co-host before we leave?
I'm going to back up what you said. I think our content's unmatched. We're the best league out there, and be on the lookout for what we're going to put out. I'm glad to be here. I'm super excited for what the Blitz is going to become. And I can't wait to see where we go, and it's going to be a great time.
Yeah, I'm really excited. Big shout out, too, before we go, to our network director, OSU. This guy, since he came in, has absolutely blown up the network. When he came in, we were getting, very low views. I think he's really taken us to the next level. And just having that guidance of somebody that's, focused on just the network, making sure that everything runs smoothly, getting shows out, the MBL Live Games. And not only that, he's one of the best broadcasters that we have. He's an incredible live broadcaster. If you haven't checked him out, go over to any of our MBL Live Games and go ahead and give him a listen because he really knows what he's doing. So big shout out to OSU before we finish here. That's going to do it for this episode of the Blitz Podcast. As always, I'm your host, TFA.